Hey everyone! This time we are going to be talking about Night Driver for the Atari 2600. This is kind of an interesting racing game. I don't normally talk about racing games, but I thought this one was kind of interesting. It's a first-person one, and, I don't like the controls at all, but I think it's actually pretty faithful to the arcade, or at least as faithful as they could make it. Night Driver was released in 1976. It was one of the first arcade games to display first-person graphics. There were two versions of this cabinet. One was a stand-up, and the other one was sitting down, kind of how you would normally drive in your car, which makes a hell of a lot more sense than having a stand-up cabinet. The controls were fairly simple. You had your steering wheel, gear shifter, and then your gas pedal. I've seen this called an accelerator. I understand why, but I've always just called it a gas pedal. Whatever. So Night Driver was later ported to the Atari 2600 in 1980, and then it was ported to the Commodore 64 in 1982. So you can kind of see it was a little bit kind of behind the times by 1980 got around. It was a 4-year-old game, but I think they did a pretty good job with it. So the 2600 port was programmed by Rob Fulop. He did a few things to it. He added color, and he had to try to work around the fact that he didn't have enough buttons to do all the different controls. Basically, he had to sacrifice the gear shifter, just simply because he just didn't have enough buttons to work with. One of the problems with Atari was you only had one button and your joystick, or you had your button and your, paddle controllers. So yeah, just simplifying those controls made a lot of sense. It kind of sucks that they had those limitations. I would have thought they could have probably done something, like come up with a steering wheel controller, but Atari didn't do that, unfortunately. I actually made the mistake of trying to play this with the joystick. That was a really, really stupid idea, and it made for just an absolutely miserable experience, as you can probably see from the gameplay. I should have used the paddle controllers. I just didn't even think about those. That would have made this so much better. While I was trying to play this, I just kept, begging that there was going to be something out there for me to play this with, so that I wouldn't have to actually keep doing this with the joystick. So it's pretty simple. You just race down a road, you have a set timer, and you're trying to crash as few times as possible. Or in my case, you're just fighting against your own stupidity because you used the wrong controller. Either way, it's still kind of a fun game that captures the spirit of the arcades. So there were a few similar games to Night Driver that came out around the same time. I don't want to use the word clone because, just honestly, we're not talking about a game that was super complicated. It was a black screen with a car on it, and you drove down a track. To think that these things were actual clones of Night Driver, at least in my mind, sounds a little strange. So Midway released a game called Midnight Driver in November 76. See, I already screwed up and called it Night Driver, but I guess I just have that game on my mind. So that was a month after Atari's Night Driver came out, which it doesn't sound like a clone to me, but, whatever. Midnight Driver would get renamed later on that year, so maybe there was more to it that I just couldn't find out. Then Microtechnics released Night Racer in 77, so that sounds a little bit more like it was cloned. And yeah, that's pretty much it. There was an Apple II port, but whatever. Night Driver does kind of look like a prototype for more modern racing games, so it's kind of cool to look at it and see where racing games went. Anyway, guys, that's going to wrap it up. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please let me know what you think in the comments below, and have a great day, everyone.